When you ask someone what their biggest fear is, they might say snakes, they might say death, but more often than not, they will say clowns. I present Do you remember when clowns started appearing randomly all over the place a while back? Stalking people? Well, it happened to me and my mom one night. It was just the two of us at home. I was playing video games, and my mom was doing something in the kitchen. I nearly had a heart attack when I heard my mom make a noise that I have never heard her make before. She gasped. It sounded like something scared her. I paused the game and walked into the kitchen where she was. She was staring at something outside. I asked her what was wrong, as I became scared just by looking at her expression, and she made a disgusted face, but also looked very frightened. I asked again what was wrong, and she ignored me again. She walked over to the dining room table and picked up her cell phone, and I took that opportunity to look out the window. Standing outside the window in our driveway, only about 15 feet from me, was a clown looking in at me. I felt goosebumps all over. My mom then started talking to someone, and I realized she had called 911. She was describing the clown. I couldn't look out the window at him because of how disturbing it was. My mom hung up the phone and told me police were coming. We both then looked out the window again, and my mom screamed. The clown was now standing right outside the window. She screamed at him to leave, and that the police were on their way. I've never been so scared in my life. She grabbed a big knife from the block on the counter, and we both went into the family room where I was playing video games. Only a few minutes later, it seemed like, we had a knock at our door, followed by the comforting sound of a policeman's voice. My mom opened the door, and the police said there was no clown outside. We didn't sleep very well that night, to say the least. Alright, so it was summer, and my two best friends and I just finished our shopping for the camping trip. We were all 16, and my friend's dad was taking us. It was quite a long drive, and we arrived about 4 hours after we had left. We set up a couple of tents, and it was already getting dark by the time we finished. We made a fire in the pit and ate dinner. We stayed up late that night talking, and my friend's dad even let the three of us drink beer. We finally went to sleep after talking and screwing around for hours. The next morning we woke up early, and breakfast was already being made. My friend's dad had told us about a waterfall he had seen a long time ago that he was sure was nearby. He said he went swimming in the water below the waterfall, and that it was secluded and really cool. He said we would have to go on a hike to get there, and I was looking forward to seeing that waterfall more than the others, and I really wanted to go swimming. After breakfast we changed into some hiking clothes, grabbed our swim trunks, and walked off into the direction of the supposed waterfall. 3 minutes into the hike, we were walking through the woods and saw a very small shack, or something like that somebody had built. It looked very old. It was run down and falling apart. We of course became curious and started walking over towards it. That's when we saw him, a clown, standing in the open doorway of the shack. The three of us stopped dead in our tracks and didn't know what to do or what to say. I can't really speak for them, but at first I wanted to laugh. But then terror quickly swept over me because of the realization that this was completely messed up. Why the hell would there be a clown out here? The clown stood there like a statue, and it was obvious that he was trying to scare us. Then He started running in our direction, and we of course turned around and ran. All three of us fell and tripped over each other because of the adrenaline and how scared we were. We made it back to camp and stared in the direction we had just come from, but he never emerged from the trees. My friend's dad said he believed us when we told him, but I don't think he really did. He was way too calm about it. The three of us freaked out and laughed about it after a while, but I think about it whenever I hang out with the two of them, and we always bring it up. This was 9 years ago, and I still think about it whenever I think of them or see a clown. What the hell was he doing out there? Planning to kidnap or murder someone? Was he just sitting out there, waiting for people to see him? The most horrific night of my life. Halloween 2010. My cousin Chris and I were roommates at the time, and we had just moved in together 2 months before Halloween. We were pretty well known in our town and wanted to throw a Halloween party at our new place. We spent the day getting the party ready, buying drinks and food, and setting up spider webs and other decorations. It was a pretty good time. I dressed up as a mad doctor, and Chris dressed up as a clown. He was the life of the party, and was doing ridiculous clown-like things to make everyone laugh. I was 18, and wasn't really used to drinking very much, but at that party, that night, I drank a lot. I started with beer, but then started taking shots with people. I can't really remember when people started to leave, but I think it was around 2 or 3 in the morning. I remember being so drunk that I couldn't move from the chair I was sitting in the living room. I was so drunk, people started leaving and I didn't even notice or care. I was just watching TV. I kind of remember Chris telling me he was going out to buy some alcohol for some people, and then I passed out. The next thing I remember is waking up to Chris coming back, walking through the garage door, and sitting on the couch opposite of me. The whole room was spinning fast, and I could not keep my vision still enough to focus on anything. I remember asking Chris if he bought the booze, and he just shook his head no. After that, I just remember going in and out of consciousness. My phone was ringing, but I ignored it. I was too drunk and tired to reach into my pocket and answer it. But it kept ringing, over and over and over. I finally pulled it out and hit the green button on the screen. "Yeah," I said into the phone drunkenly. Then I heard Chris's voice say, "Shit, dude, finally. We were just about to leave. We're at Jack in the Box. Do you want anything?" In my drunken state, I didn't put it together right away, but I remember looking over at Chris on the couch, but the room was spinning so much I couldn't make out his face, just the bright colors from his costume. I then said to Chris sitting on the couch, "Dude, stop. I think I'm gonna throw up. Stop calling me. Just stop." He said nothing back, and then I heard Chris's voice on the phone say, "Later," and he hung up. I sat there for a minute, barely able to think, but then somehow I had a moment of clarity. I realized that I heard girls in the background on the phone, and then I put it together. I sat up on the chair and then stood up on my feet. Whoever was sitting on the couch in front of me was a complete blur, so I started walking over to him. Each step was extremely difficult. I stopped in front of him, squinted my eyes, and put my hands on the side of my head. It worked. It steadied my vision, and I could clearly see the older man sitting on the couch, smiling at me. I asked him who the hell he was, and then he got up and walked past me. I stood there facing the couch, unable to turn around. That's the last thing I remember. The next thing I knew, I woke up in a hospital, and I felt a very different kind of drunk. I asked a random nurse standing near me where I was and what the hell was going on, and she told me that I had been attacked. About 24 hours later, I was finally thinking clearly again when I woke up. Chris, my sisters, my parents were all in the room. I asked what happened again, and Chris said that he found me laying on the living room floor in a puddle of blood. They were as confused as I was, but I tried to tell them that I thought that it was Chris in the room with me. They didn't understand, but I told them there was a man. There was a man in the house. It was a clown. Every year, my town hosts a carnival. Carousels, fair games, Hall of Mirrors, and that stupid twirly swing ride that makes you want to vomit. They really pull out all the stops for this one weekend in October. Growing up, I would get sugar sick, as my mom liked to call it, from all the cotton candy and funnel cakes. I'd only feel the symptoms after the night was done, while laying in bed, clutching my prizes. I ignored the pain and played back all the festivities in my head. I skip the carnival now. It doesn't do anything for me anymore. So imagine my dismay as my girlfriend, who helps work the carnival, dragged me along one night after all the crowds had left. "No lines," she squealed. "I even know how to turn on the Ferris wheel." I tried to look excited. She yanked me over to the shooting gallery, and we sat down in front of a counter lined with water pistols. Several bullseye targets hung about 15 feet away. We fired away, but of course, I let her win. I jumped the counter and make my way over to the prize rack. Huge stuffed animals, baseball caps, and t-shirts lined the wall. "Which one do you want?" I yelled back. She tried to look like she was making a life-altering decision. I'll admit now, it was kind of cute. Before choosing, I see her whip out her cell phone and snap a picture of me next to the prizes. I'm stuck between picking you or the stuffed octopus next to the clown head doll. I'll take the octopus. I rolled my eyes and reached past the clown head doll for the octopus. From there, she pulled me over to the carousel. I watched her disappear into the engineer's control room, and a few seconds later the pipe organ started and the carousel cranked into motion. During the ride, she felt it was time for another picture. I really tried to smile this time. We only stayed in the Hall of Mirrors for a few minutes. It was pitch black in there. We kept bumping into the mirrors and each other. Of course, she snapped a picture in there too. The blinding flash didn't help our disorientation. After the terrifying Hall of Mirrors situation, we decided to leave. She told me she was going to go home and post pictures of the great night. The next morning I got on Facebook and noticed the small album she uploaded. I started reading through the comments. "Lucky bastards, carnival all to yourself, nice." What caught me off guard were the next comments. "Love the photobombing clown. Who is that dressed up as the clown?" Wait, what? I looked through the pictures again, and sure enough, there it is. In the carousel picture, there was a tall clown in the background. The speed of the ride somewhat blurred his image, but I could see him just standing there, arms at his sides. In the Hall of Mirrors, the flash illuminated the face of a smiling clown. In one mirror in the corner of the picture, there was something chillingly twisted about his expression. How many times did I collide into him thinking it was my girlfriend? And lastly, there was the picture of me standing next to the shooting gallery prize rack. There he was next to the octopus I grabbed for my girlfriend. I thought he was a doll. The realization made me absolutely sick. I was a hair's length away from him. His warm breath probably grazed my skin. What sort of sick delight did he get from doing this? I called up my girlfriend, who was still asleep, and asked her if she knew the clowns that were hired for the carnival. Her reply made me shudder. They got rid of clowns 5 years ago when parents complained that they were scaring the kids. I was at a birthday party. Everyone was in the backyard. The adults were sitting around watching the kids, and the kids were watching the clown. I remember thinking the entire time I was watching this clown's act, why would Mark and his wife hire this guy? He was tall, skinny, with dark brown hair. He seemed very into his act, and I was sure that I noticed him giving more attention to one little boy, almost like his act was meant for just him, and he was trying to impress just him. It gave me the creeps because the boy was my neighbor's son, and he was a very handsome kid. I don't think any other adults really noticed or thought this guy was creepy like I did, but eventually the sun started to set. We all had finished eating our hot dogs and burgers, and the clown had obviously ended his usual act and was now just winging it, just making up random things to do to crack up the kids. Meanwhile, his gaze was mostly fixed on my neighbor's little boy. I whispered to my girlfriend and asked if she thought he was creepy, and she told me no. The kids started to get bored with this clown, who called himself Sickly. Sickly the Clown. Again, I have no clue why they hired this guy. Most of the kids were swimming now, and only 2 or 3 were still watching Sickly, not including my neighbor's son. Sickly kept glancing over at him in the pool, and I almost had had enough and was about to walk over and subtly tell this clown to leave and then explain to Mark afterwards. But he decided he was leaving just before I did. Right after I saw his beat-up old Volkswagen Beetle drive away, I told Mark about what I saw and what I thought, and he was creeped out too, but didn't seem worried about it because he had just left. The party went on for a few more hours before people started leaving, and we left pretty early too. I was getting into my car when literally I looked up and saw the clown parked between a van and a truck down the street. He wasn't far at all, and I was so taken back by this. He was just sitting there watching. He saw that I had seen him and looked away, but I decided to go approach him. I could see that he was in a panic as I was walking over, and he started his engine. I jogged over to him before he had the chance to pull away, and he had his window rolled down. I leaned inside just before he drove off and said, "Don't ever come back here." The scariest part of this is what he replied to me with, in his disturbing and surprising normal voice. "Oh, I'm coming back." I was so shocked I couldn't believe this asshole. I ran back over to Mark's house and told him, and he called the cops. We left, and Mark told me at work the following Monday that they never saw Sickly the Clown by his house again that night. I had learned that evening that his name fits rather well. Thank you all so much for watching, and if you enjoyed these stories, then please do me a huge favor and share the video. It really helps me out a lot. If you haven't already, please subscribe to my channel so you do not miss what is coming up next. I hope you have a fantastic day and a horrifying night.